is no backdoor built into Bitcoin that could be abused in any kind of way. There is no way for the government to overtake it because of the way it has been set up.
I would trust more a system that I know the rules, which are very simple, and where the trust is very distributed.
If we were all just to get rich, but everyone's miserable, like, what does that really accomplish for you? Sometimes to get from that point where they think people are only in this to make quick money to, oh wait, this is a movement.
Hey Sam.
Hi Salo.
I gotta give a brief intro into you. It's a little weird when you're close friends with someone, you know? This is Sam Wouters. Did I say it correctly?
Wouters.
Wouters. I like it.
Pretty close.
Sam is a Bitcoin legend in my book, because I think when you've been in the space for a while, there's like certain classes of OG, and Sam definitely fits the, 2012, 2013 OG book. And he's when we met, I realized Sam is not only just a Bitcoiner, he is actually a very good person, an amazing friend, and I would say that he's one of the best quality people I've met in this space, which is why I'm excited to have you on. And I would love if you can give a brief intro and maybe say who you are and for the people listening.
Well, thanks for the kind words. I've been into Bitcoin for a long time indeed. Discovered it back in 2013. And what I struggled with in the first months, especially back then, is that almost all of the explanation was very technical, because most of the people who were interested in Bitcoin at the time had programming backgrounds, were interested in things like cryptography and networks and all kinds of things that I had no idea about. So when I first discovered it, I just struggled to understand it. It was too much. And I think even today, when a lot of people look at Bitcoin, they kind of get scared off by the technical things and get this feeling of maybe it's not for me. But there are a lot of good resources out there and a lot of simple ways to get a bit more familiar with it. So I realized quite early on, once I encountered some of Andreas Antonopoulos' content, like, wow, there's a person who can explain it in clear terms, but there's only one Andreas and there's an entire world out there of people who want to learn more about this. So I figured, what if I could also write articles, give presentations, just make it more accessible to people? Then maybe it'll become more successful. I can do my small part in helping educate people. So that's kind of what I set out to do back then, and I've just done a variety of things to get to the point of today, where I am director of marketing at River, which is a US-based brokerage where people can buy and sell Bitcoin, where they can use Bitcoin interest on cash and all of these kinds of interesting features that like 10 years ago people couldn't imagine doing yet. So it's been a really cool journey, and I'm just like, to me, what I do doesn't feel like a job. It feels like a passion, and it's just really fun to be able to work in this industry.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You gave like that brief intro into when you begin. You kind of you're figuring a lot of things out, and I would say even today we're still kind of figuring things out. So people always think that you either know everything or you don't know anything, and I think that's one of the limiting factors. I would love to get your take too on, whenever we talk to people, there's always this, I feel there's this difference between the perception of what Bitcoin is, because people automatically, they tie it into crypto, Bitcoin, just everything in general, and there's some perception to it, but the reality that you might live or you might have experience with Bitcoin. And can you give us some light onto like that difference, right? That gap between the perception of Bitcoin or what Bitcoin really is, at least for you in your case.
I mean, a lot of people look at it in very financial ways, like a way to there's this perception of it's a way to get rich quickly, or it's like it's a pyramid scheme, or these kinds of terms that people ascribe to it. And I think it's much more about, like, when you're inside the space and you really get Bitcoin, it's much more about not getting poor slowly through inflation. And there's a massive gap between those things. And it takes people a lot of time and understanding sometimes to get from that point where they think about, oh, this is just like people are only in this to make quick money, to, oh, wait, this is a movement of people that deeply believe our money is broken and our systems are broken. And actually, like, these people aren't the greedy type of people who are just trying to hoard as much wealth as possible themselves. They're actually builders and optimists about the future, and people who would really like to change the way society's operating system works through money. And yeah, it's a huge discrepancy there, and people like to have like their quick prejudice about it, also in a way to protect themselves from, I first heard about Bitcoin in 2017 or so, but I kind of dismissed it. It's easier to tell yourself, I don't need to pay attention to this anymore. I missed the boat. All those guys got rich, and that's that. Like it's, it'll probably stick around. Maybe it'll do okay still, but it's certainly not going to make me rich or not going to have an impact on my life. And then a lot of people just decide for themselves, like, instead of kind of still giving it a look and realizing what's there and why so many people are still paying attention to it today and why it keeps growing, they're just like, like whatever, maybe I'll catch the next thing. Maybe it's going to be about AI or something else, and that's where I can make some money. And they kind of miss the point by thinking that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people have that like lottery ticket approach versus like not building wealth, but let's say kind of changing lifestyle. I compare it a lot to like gym people, or when you're working out, they say like, yeah, you can obviously work out a lot and do a bunch of things and for a short period of time, and maybe you do get ripped, but it's a change of lifestyle that you have to do to really actually see the gains and the value there, right?
The same with diets. People want the quick results, and they lose a bunch of weight, and then they go back to eating whatever junk food, and it comes right back. You have to change the lifestyle.
That's very true. That's very true. And when with the people that I talk to, it's just like you get how it's normal. Not everybody's going to be passionate and working in the Bitcoin space, so you're kind of in it. So for people detached from it, it's kind of like this afterthought, right? Of like, but that afterthought of Bitcoin is still kind of like, for the majority, like that lottery ticket or that volatile thing that goes up and down, and they don't really question the why has it gone up and not really gone down like a long period of time, right? So it's an interesting task we have ahead, and it's great that you're leading, obviously, marketing at River, and you've done a lot of great efforts into educating people. And that's actually one of the first ways I even saw you on Twitter or just heard about you, because you really focus on like data driven, like actual substance, more than just, oh, did Bitcoin price go up or down or whatever is like, the most hyped up thing at the moment. Yeah, so one of the main things I would say most people is they say, okay, well, crypto is very volatile, right? They talk about crypto as a whole instead of Bitcoin specifically. And Bitcoin, which is what you focus on specifically and where you focus all of your efforts, I want to get your take. How can other people see this? Like, how can you give people another lens to see the difference between Bitcoin and crypto? And I would argue most people don't even know that there's a difference, right?
Yeah, they definitely don't. You get into a lot of conversations with people who say like, oh yeah, I bought some Bitcoin years ago. I know about it, or I'm very familiar with it. And then if you ask a little bit more, it turns out they bought a cryptocurrency, but they all kind of look at it in the same way. And I think what sort of sets Bitcoin apart is that it was launched in a way that will probably not be replicated, where there was an anonymous founder who moved away from the project. Whereas today, any project that gets launched, there's a team behind it. There's a group of people who kind of decide the rules, who need to kickstart the project, who need to define how the system operates, and who stay very involved and influential. And as a result, a lot of these other projects that get launched are very centralized. But most people don't really care about that. They don't care whether it's decentralized or centralized. They don't understand why that makes any kind of difference. What they're primarily interested in is like, will this thing go up and can I make a lot of money in the short term? So people get into this for very different reasons. And because of those different reasons, they may or may not care whether a Bitcoin is different or not.
So in your opinion, the biggest differentiator is the way it was launched more than how the protocol works, or like maybe other technical details that...
Definitely, like that's a big differentiator, and it's what has led to Bitcoin's network effect today. That is what's so powerful about it. Like, sure, you could invent a better coin, like sort of like on paper, if we were to change these parameters, then it will work more efficiently based on like what we've learned with Bitcoin over the last 16 years. Like maybe there's some tweaks that could be made there that would make it more easy, or sort of like easier to do certain things with the protocol that Bitcoin developers are struggling to figure out in a good way today. Like that might be possible. But even if you were to make those breakthroughs and changes in some new coin, then you still need to rebuild that network effect that Bitcoin already has today. Because people aren't going to switch for something that's like 5% better, or for something that makes claims like, the transactions per second that you can do on this chain are so much higher.
Right.
Because that is not the problem that people have with Bitcoin today. That's not what's stopping them from adopting it or using it. So it's not so much about the technology, but it's much more about the human side of who decides the rules, like who's involved there, how can we keep doing that in a way where no particular person is in charge and can be pressured. And then who are the people adopting it that I can actually interact with on that network?
Yeah.
And replicating how Bitcoin has grown to how large it is today is something that every single new project that has launched after it has failed to do.
Right.
And some of them will succeed more than others. But in general, it's just stood head and shoulders above the rest. And yeah, this is like kind of like very visual across the spectrum of everything that's going on in Bitcoin.
And just to play devil's advocate here, because I might imagine some people thinking like, okay, so the biggest differentiator is the way that this coin or this blockchain was launched. In the beginning, it was the first one by an anonymous founder. Some people might think that's sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously like some people think it's the government who launched it or whoever launched it. Maybe touching a bit on like what would you think is a counter argument to that, or that claim that, like, you know what, maybe that doesn't make me trust it more, that makes me trust it less.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think a big, totally get where that concern's coming from. I think a big differentiator there is, like, if you look, it's kind of like, what do you trust more? Is it the network that was launched and has been running for the past 16 years that has over $2 trillion market cap? Like, there's a lot of people who have gone through this process of looking into Bitcoin, looking at the code, which is open source. Like, if you're a very skeptical person and you don't really trust what's happening there, you have to realize there's a lot of people before you who were in this exact same position.
Yeah.
Like, you're not the first to feel that apprehension.
Yeah.
So even if you're not a technical person, you can kind of come to the realization, okay, there are thousands of technical people who have gone through every line of code in the Bitcoin protocol to figure out, like, isn't there some way for this sketchy unknown founder to overtake the system and change the rules and just like ruin it for everyone else? And all of those programmers have unanimously decided that no, there is no backdoor built into Bitcoin that could be abused in any kind of way. There is no way for the government to overtake it because of the way it has been set up and the way the protocol works today. So as a result, a lot of people then conclude, okay, it's trustworthy. In fact, I trust a significant amount of my savings to it as an individual developer or some community member or user. And that is how the ball gets rolling from there.
Yeah.
Whereas with decentralized projects, it's like, okay, it lives here on a GitHub. There's, one foundation or team of like 5 guys here who are essentially playing like central bank. They're altering the rules kind of on the fly to accommodate whatever they need to keep the price of their coin higher up.
Right.
And that is far more sketchy because what we are then recreating is basically the way central banking works today, where a bunch of guys make decisions behind closed doors that affect everyone, and you just don't really have a say in it.
Yeah. So from what I'm gathering, which I would agree with, is it all has to do with where trust is placed and how it's distributed.
Yep.
And with obviously what we know now with how governments work with printing money, it's completely centralized. You have to trust that politicians are not going to just print money as they've been printing for the last 100 years or however much. And in the case of Bitcoin specifically, it's a little bit more trustless than all of other cryptocurrencies because of the way, not only how it was designed, where the founder or founders, whoever it was, launched it and then kind of detached away, and then that decentralized a bit of the power through the way that the system works. Now, whereas the other cryptocurrencies, it's a little bit more centralized. You know who the founder is, who the team is, the foundation, like they like to call themselves, and then from there on, they kind of have a little bit more of that control or power with the decision making, right?
Yep.
And some would argue that that's a good thing or bad thing, especially if you're looking at it more in like as a business sense. But I would argue with you in this case that I would trust more a system that I know the rules, which are very simple,
yep,
and where the trust is very distributed, very displaced, not so much like in one person or one
yep,
group. Keeping the ball rolling with this subject, there's also that idea, right, of the Bitcoin community. And I think most people don't know that. It's like a niche within the niche. And then there's the crypto community, right? That's kind of a way for Bitcoiners to segment themselves out of this perception of
yep,
scammers and things like that. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because you do work for a Bitcoin-only company,
yep,
which is very values-driven. And what's your take on that? Like, why is the Bitcoin community separating themselves out from everything else?
Yeah. I think when Bitcoin started growing in prominence, you naturally saw other people, like, because the code is open source, you saw other people take the Bitcoin project, clone it, change a few parameters, slap a new name on there, and go like, look, this is now a better version of Bitcoin in one way or another. So a lot of people started abusing the brand that Bitcoin had built up and the technology that was built there. to launch their own projects and essentially use that to enrich themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been done like thousands of times over. And the Bitcoin community, as you're referring to it, like really emerged from people realizing like, wait, we are starting a movement here, but other people are abusing that movement to try to benefit themselves rather than like build something that benefits everyone. And that created sort of like an I'd say it's very much an online community of people who get very vocal against those types of scammers,
Right.
and aren't afraid to call that out and call it what
Mm-hmm.
it is. Which of course like gets pushback from those people who are like, not everything we're doing is a scam. Like some of this is us trying to like experiment with creating better technology and whatnot. But there's a lot of marketing promises there, because there are teams around this. There are, to your point, like it's built like a business. So these businesses are trying to figure out, okay, how do we position this well? How do we make sure that our investors make good money and that we do too? And that's where you get into like the whole centralization aspect of it. So I think like what you get there is like, on the one hand, you get sometimes people call them like they're almost like a toxic online community where they can be quite sort of like aggressive in putting people in their place when they kind of defend the scams that are happening, because there are a lot of scams unfortunately in this space. And then on the other hand, you have people go like, like, let us be free, let us innovate with whatever we want. And, if we make a little promise here and there and people lose some money, that's all part of the game. And there's just like two very different belief sets there that kind of just lead to the conclusion of what we were talking about earlier. Like, Bitcoin is not part of crypto. There is very little, like, there are certainly people who hold both different cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. There's a lot of them. But when it comes to the community and the people that are building within each of those sets, there's actually very little overlap. And that just, like it creates all kinds of arguments between the groups, obviously, and different views on how to create value in the world. But I think the kind of like the reason why we're so focused on Bitcoin as well, actually only focused on Bitcoin, is because we see a group of people that really has a drive and a passion to change the world, and that has that mindset of, I'm going to take ownership of my life and actually build something up and create value for myself and my descendants and whatnot in the long run. Whereas the crypto community is often more focused on like, how can I get an edge here? How can I trade? How can I buy all these tokens, like use all these DeFi platforms or whatnot to try to make quick money in one way or another. And they're willing to take far more risk in a lot of cases, as long as there's that promise of I could 100x my money tomorrow. So it's very focused on traders, and as a result, those kinds of individuals are also more drawn towards platforms that offer these kinds of solutions. And what they are essentially, a customer of is a casino, because the casino's incentive of a lot of these big exchanges is like, let's get all the people in here, let's get them to trade every possible token and asset, and we extract as much value as possible from them in the process. Let's keep them trading. Whereas our perspective is much more like, we want our clients to win. We want those builders, those visionaries, those people who want to create value in the world to be able to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible within their means, and have that as a robust and safe sort of like asset that they can rely on, that supports their life and the things they want to accomplish. So that's a very different mindset. And as a result, that attracts people who share those values and are interested in that. And then you get the Bitcoiners on board. Whereas those big exchanges, not exclusively, like there's a lot of people who will literally just look up, what's the easiest place to buy Bitcoin? And they see the biggest exchanges listed at the top, and they have no idea about the difference there. But if you were to, for example, like you have an aunt or something or a friend, and you tell them like, oh, go sign up to this big exchange here. They've been around for a long time. People trust them. They're familiar with them. But then within a week of signing up, they get an email like, why don't you start trading a little bit of this like fart coin or whatever it's called nowadays, that's going viral, or this Dogecoin thing. And they go like, oh, that sounds great. It's really cheap. I could own 10,000 of those, whereas I can only have like 0.1 Bitcoin or something. It feels better to them. They think like, maybe I'll make a whole bunch of money here real quick. It looks like the graph went up and down a bunch.
It's like the lottery ticket approach versus the like actually building wealth, or like changing that way you see the world. I agree with that completely, and it's something I resonate with. Everybody talks about this idea of how you come for the for the like number go up, or like for the speculation to get rich, and then you
Mm.
kind of end up here in the revolution somehow. And it sounds a bit aggressive, but I think people from the outside don't understand, since people aren't really aware of how big the problem is that we're talking about, of
Mm.
obviously how the system's broken in many different ways and how Bitcoin is actually a solution to it. They don't really see it as a way out of a system that
Yep.
they're in. They just see crypto as like, hey, it's like any other thing I can speculate on and make a lot of money on, right? So I think it's very good that you guys focus on just high signal, low noise. Uh, you don't have to really think about too much. It's just like you're going directly towards the people who want that change. And I think that would be the most important part of highlighting to other people, right? Like it is mission driven, it's values driven. Bitcoin specifically, and all the crypto stuff is mostly at best a business use case, right?
Yep.
When we talk about Bitcoin and obviously how great it is, theoretically it sounds really good, right? It sounds like, okay, great, you have this limited currency, it buys you more over time versus fiat buys you less over time, and it fixes a lot of different problems in the world. How has that applied to you in your life or your family or whoever? How have you benefited from Bitcoin in every sense of the way, right? That people can resonate with
Mm.
and see.
I think the biggest one for me is the people that you end up surrounding yourself with. To my point just now, like it this kind of, I guess, like the asset and the movement around it attracts a certain type of, generally, not always, but generally higher quality people that have some integrity, that are hopeful about the future. And when I look at a lot of people around me in the world that are skeptical about Bitcoin, like also just like friends from back in the day or whatnot, or colleagues or acquaintances, they don't look at the world too positively in some cases or many cases. They don't really have like a clear view of like, how do I work my way out of my situation? Like, how do I really meaningfully improve my quality of life? Or is there even any hope for me to own a house one day, or to have a family, to move to the country I would want to move to? Or am I going to be stuck at this desk, working this one job, which hopefully won't get replaced by AI? It's like, it's that kind of mindset that a lot of people live in. And, they kind of like, they consume and they entertain themselves to stay distracted from the struggles in their life. Whereas in the Bitcoin space, you're surrounded by people who look at the future and they're hopeful and they're excited, and they kind of like see a better path. And being surrounded by those people gives tremendous energy every single day. It gives so much motivation to do what you do. And people often say, like, you're kind of like the sum of the people that you surround yourself with.
Yeah,
And that has such a big impact on just like your general mood, on your willingness to like actually go the extra mile, put in the extra hours or effort to really create high quality things. Um, and that is to me like the biggest possible reward, I think. Like obviously, Bitcoin going up and accumulating in value is great, but that, if we were all just to get rich, but everyone's miserable, like you know, what does that really accomplish for you? Like Bitcoin
yeah,
went way up, but it didn't become a global success or whatever.
of
And as a
course,
result, you look around you and everyone's just miserable. That's not really a hopeful future. So I think that's really been the biggest one. And then also seeing that same effect for the people around you, for the friends and family who were initially skeptical, then get interested in it, and you see it gradually affecting them. They look at you and how you've changed. They look at their own lives, and you just see them picking things up that they've previously been struggling with or struggling to work through. And they just start looking at their life differently. Like, wait, I'm not going to complain about politics and wait for some politician to fix all these problems. Like, I'll just start doing it myself. Like, why not? There's literally nothing holding you back but yourself, they
of
often
course,
say. So it's seeing people sort of like get that, of like, oh, when I have, when I'm not feeling like I'm gradually just struggling to get by over time, but I'm starting to save again. Because really what a lot of people have lost is the ability to actually save for the future, and thus build like something up for themselves. Like, you can save dollars in your bank account or euros or whatever currency, but they slowly lose value over time. And a lot of people end up feeling like, why would I bother if I'm never going to be able to own a home? So having that different framework in your life of the ability to build something up and to build something greater, that's crazy. I don't know anything else that really helps you accomplish that. It's like, it's about investing in yourself in a way, just like it is to your point of like, if you start going to the gym, that's also an investment in yourself. It's believing in, like, I want my next years and decades, I want to feel better in my body. But it's a really big step, and it's a step a lot of people aren't willing to make, because it requires a lot of effort, and it requires a lot of change, and people are apprehensive about the change. So it's I would equate it to something like that. It's like a different shift in your life, but a very powerful one. That, like, honestly, it doesn't even take that much effort or time. It's you just start learning a little bit and start understanding, like, why is it that everyone who gets into Bitcoin, like, sort of like stays there, remains active there? Like, it's not like people get in, make a bunch of money, and then leave it and say, I don't believe it in anymore.
But you know what? I think we're also surrounded by a specific group of people, because if you talk to other people outside of the space, even outside the crypto space, their idea is like, oh, I know so and so who lost this amount of money on Bitcoin, but it was actually on crypto, like we were talking about before.
Mhm.
Or, oh yeah, like I had this before, but it went down and like you lost money and like I just like let it go. Like there's so many cases like that. And I was gonna ask you, even relating to, you're talking about like the good effects of, like, you know, people around you who kind of see it, but what do you do with those who don't? Right? Like, how do you approach it with people who just are just no, like no. Even my brother took a while to like really get in on
Mhm.
it, or like we have like people around us who are just like
Yep.
no.
Yeah, you have to. I always say, like, you have to find. You can't stuff it in their face. You can't, like, dump a book on them or a podcast and tell them to go listen to fix their mindset. I think you have to find them, like, where they're at, and figure out, like, what is the thing that's holding you back from this, or what is, like, more broadly, like, kind of like, what's holding you back in your own life. Like, what are you not happy about? What are you struggling with? And helping them understand, if it's something that leads back to money, it's like,
Yeah,
why are you struggling with this? Because for some people, it might be the frustration of, yeah, I don't think I'll be able to afford a home. And it's helping them to understand, like, that is not about politics. Or even if it is about politics, like, a politician isn't going to fix that for you. So, like, let's talk about that. Let's figure out, like, how can we get you to that point then, rather than just giving up and saying, all right, I'll just, spend my weekends gambling or whatever, or drinking, and just trying to forget about it.
yeah,
But not everyone is obviously ready for that conversation
of
either.
course. I think
That's
it's definitely a
Yeah.
matter of being ready. What
But
would you? Sorry, go
I would
ahead.
say, like, if you're close to the person and you can approach it from an angle of, like, hey, I see you're having a hard time, and I care about you, and I want to help you.
Yeah,
That's a totally different angle than
agreed.
coming to them like,
Yes,
look, I invested in Bitcoin all those years ago. I know better than you. You should do what
yes,
I think. It's That's, like,
yeah.
very
There's ego involved
confrontational
for sure.
for people. So,
And what would you tell people who actually you, let's say someone who is ready, you can feel like okay, they're kind of intrigued, right?
mhm.
How would you go about getting them involved? Like they see you, Sam, they see, wow, I see Sam has kind of changed, I feel he's doing better, like he's made the right decisions, like I want to live kind of like Sam, or I want to kind of take the same approach. What would you tell someone who's getting in, and specifically someone who's younger, right, who might feel like,
Mhm.
oh, I need to buy the next lottery ticket because I don't have enough money, like I don't, like
Mhm.
they don't want the 0.001 Bitcoin, they want the 10,000 Dogecoin, whatever, I don't know, whatever the
Yeah,
crypto is.
there's unfortunately a lot of people that, they're not going to learn until they hit their head, basically. Like, they're
Yeah.
going to make whatever silly choices, and maybe there'll be the very small percentage of people that get lucky, that make a bunch of money, and that then have the actual patience to say, I'm gonna, like,
Very rare. I
I'm,
don't know
I'm
how
gonna
possible
I'm
that
gonna
is.
stop here, and I'm just
Yeah.
gonna put a bunch of it into Bitcoin now that I have some actual capital, and I'm gonna leave the gambling. That happens to almost nobody. In the vast majority of cases, people try to get shortcuts, they try to get rich
Yeah.
quickly, and then they just end up losing money over time. So, there's a lot of people, you will never change their mind on this perspective, and they're just going to try. So that's up to them.
But
I
let's
think,
assume it's the person who's like actually ready, who's
yeah.
actually
And if
intrigued.
you're actually willing to get started, it's much more about, like, it doesn't have to be a big decision. A lot of people look up at this like, yeah, I'm gonna have to, like, sit down on a weekend and, like, really, like, read through a bunch of things and have my friend walk me through and whatnot. And it's like, honestly, like, you can just get started and buy, like, $10 worth or something, and just play around with that. And if you're gonna lose that, like, you can hopefully afford
Yeah.
to lose that. Just, like, don't start out with any kind of money that you're too afraid to lose.
Hmm.
And it's just about exploring there and seeing, okay, what is that like? Would I ever want to buy a little bit more than that or not? Like, you can make all those decisions as you go. It doesn't have to be an all-in kind of thing,
Right.
because setting up an account on a lot of exchanges nowadays can just be done in a few minutes, and then you're essentially ready. So if you decide, literally, after listening to this, like, okay, I'll just give it a try, then you totally can.
Okay.
But it's about making that first step for a lot of people, and realizing that this is not a big roadblock. It's kind of like if you've never been to the gym, to go back to that point, you can be like, oh, if I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna need this whole plan and whatnot, and I'll need to figure out my diet and all these exercises. Like, no, you can kind of go there. You can literally just go on a treadmill for 10 minutes and see what you think about it, and if you hate it, then you leave.
Yeah, and I
It's
kind
kind
of
of like that.
yeah, that makes sense. And you go to the gym and you see someone who's ripped or who's
Yeah.
okay,
Or
you
you
kind of
just
get inspired, right? You
Yeah.
start like the
Or you
juices
just ask
flowing.
them some questions like, hey, I'm a
Yeah,
beginner.
yeah,
What exercise would you recommend? And
yeah,
then you get going. Like it doesn't have to be this big mental roadblock, but
yeah,
it is for a lot of people because it's new to them. It's intimidating. And they feel like if they do it, then they really want to do it well. And
right.
that's kind of holding them back from just trying and seeing what they think about it.
Yeah,
So just starting small, I think, makes a really big impact for people. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Like everyone who's ever gotten into Bitcoin has been a critic, has been skeptical about stuff, has kind of struggled to get started with things. But there's a lot of good, simple guides out there. Um, and there's a lot of people in the space that are super willing to help and help you get started and that are very
right.
excited if you want to. So,
Yeah, I guess what I'm gathering too, it's kind of the concept of it's a marathon, it's not a race. Right. So even talking about this, I want to get your take on how can we live this right in our day to day life? How can we live this and kind of be a part of this, right? How does Sam do it, or how would Sam say that is the way that people should be doing it?
yeah. We haven't really covered kind of like what does this practically look like too
Yeah,
much yet,
exactly.
because people may listen and get this idea of, oh, it's about like, wait, are you seriously suggesting that you should go all in on Bitcoin or use Bitcoin as money? Because a lot of people, they always show the physical coins in all the articles. They
Yeah,
talk about it as some kind of new form of money, and a lot of people, frankly, arrive at the conclusion like, yeah, but like, are you seriously expecting me to try to use this at the
yeah,
local grocery store to
yeah.
buy stuff or
Hmm.
whatnot? And getting to that point as a society, or even for a lot of Bitcoiners, will take a lot of time. Like money doesn't mean that it's something that you go spend at every possible place or opportunity. It's primarily like it starts out as a store of value, a way to protect your savings, which the dollar has lost. The dollar is a really good sort of like medium of exchange. It's something you can quickly and easily exchange physically or online. Bitcoin can also do that, but it's not the main way people use it today. So the way you could kind of look at it is that we're in this kind of like transition period where the dollar is not really suitable for savings for a good part of the world. For another part, like South America, for example, I don't need to explain to you, but that's where a lot of people would very happily save in dollars because their own currencies are way worse off, and they would gladly do that. But in the US, for example, if you hold your wealth in dollars there, you're going to lose like 7 to 8% per year to money being printed, which then is also reflected in inflation and whatnot, but it's monetary inflation. And that's just not tenable. That's not something you can do. While in the US, it's at the same time, it's really easy to spend dollars. There's lots of good apps. Paying in a store is just like a couple seconds with Apple Pay. So all of that works perfectly. So rather than looking at Bitcoin as, oh, like, do I need to move away from the dollar now for my spending because it's so convenient and I've got all these bills set up and whatnot? You don't have to do that. Just look at it as your savings account in a way. Like, look at it as, okay, that's where I'm gradually going to accumulate wealth over time, and then I can decide, like, I can move a little bit to my spending account in dollars whenever I want to. But that's not a position you immediately have to move to. You can gradually build that up. This is why, like a river, one of the most popular ways for people to accumulate Bitcoin is like dollar cost averaging. It's like every paycheck you decide like how much do I want to allocate to buying Bitcoin, and then people just buy like $50 a week or 500 or
Yeah,
whatever number makes most sense for them, and they gradually build up that Bitcoin position, which
yeah,
generally historically has accumulated in value. Whereas if they would have kept that money in their bank account, it would decrease in value. And it's about gradually making that shift for a lot of people. Some people, if they're immediately convinced and they believe in this, then they'll make a bigger move. They just buy the whole lot immediately and hold as little as possible in their bank account. But that's not the truth for most people.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, it's about looking at it at a shift like that of like, okay, at least I'm going to move my savings here. The spending, it can remain the way the world operates today, but over time, probably gradually, more and more merchants will also realize like, wait, those credit card fees, they're like 3, 4% that I'm paying on every transaction. they often pass that on to the consumer who needs to pay more for the goods, and they realize, well, if I would accept Bitcoin, and the transaction fee there is a whole bunch lower, then I've got a competitive edge over other businesses. So they might start offering that more and more, and then the consumer will begin to realize as well, like, yeah, why don't I actually pay with that? It's going to end up cheaper for me. But that shift can take a lot of time.
Yeah.
To get there.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think even in my case, it's just the idea of seeing it like your savings vehicle. This, when you save in dollars, you're going to be able to buy less over time, and when you save in Bitcoin, it's going to buy you more over time. I think it's so simple, but it's such a powerful kind of change or shift in mentality, right?
Yep.
Like the idea that before a house used to cost, I don't know, let's say 50 Bitcoin, and today it might cost 3 or 4 or 5 in the US, like the average household. And then over time, that should be going down, whereas in fiat, it's actually going up. I think it's a concept that people don't really see it that way. Mm-hmm. They just kind of measure the value of Bitcoin like, oh, how much dollars is it going to make me? But yep. If you change the mindset of how much more is this going to buy me versus if I save in this other currency, yep. then that's a really shift in the mindset that's worked for me at least. And yeah, and just a last point: if you were to talk to 20-year-old Sam back in the day, I don't know how many. I'm not gonna dox your age, but let's assume that 10 years ago, 30, 20 years ago, whatever it is, what would you recommend if he was living in this age now? Like, what would be your advice to him relating to Bitcoin or to just in these topics, right? Like, would you suggest anything? What recommendations would you have?
I think it would just be very simple. Like, just take it seriously. Even if you feel like, like, what could this still do for me? Hasn't the ship already sailed? Like, take it seriously. Like, really do, like, put in a little bit of effort to understand that, kind of like what I was touching on earlier. Most people who get into Bitcoin, they don't leave. Even still today, they're still buying. If Bitcoin were like some kind of Ponzi scheme, or people thought that the price isn't going to go up more, then they would be selling. But instead, all these Bitcoiners keep buying more. So there's got to be something there. And it's not about like how high can the Bitcoin price reach? Because frankly, like, it wouldn't surprise me if in a couple decades from now, a Bitcoin is worth millions, like, or dozens of millions. Like, it can all happen. And it's not so much because it will become worth so much more. It's just like, it's much more. We know there will be a near infinite number of dollars that will get printed. That is a guarantee. We already know that's going to happen because it's what's been happening for decades. And that's not going to change. So take that simple fact serious. Like, the government isn't going to change that. They cannot fix that. There is no solution to it. So you can't wait for them to fix it. You have to look at this thing that exists today, where there is a limited supply that people, that you cannot increase. So people want to have their own share of that to be able to save their value. And as a result, that could mean that you'll be able to preserve your purchasing power into the future. And that is such a powerful thing. Like, it's going to set you up to be able to do so many things in your life that you will not be able to if your savings gradually get devalued. So, it might not make you rich quickly, but that's really not the point of it. It's about making sure your future's comfortable, you have some hope for your future, and you can really build something up.
Sam, that was great. Love to get your insight there. I think a lot of people can get value from everything that you said because, I mean, obviously you've lived a lot of this, and at the same time, I think just a couple of things that anyone who's listening or seeing this could resonate with or plant a seed, I think is something that could really change your life. So thank you so much for having this conversation with us.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.